The Wyoming moon hung like a silver dollar in the black sky, casting long shadows across the dusty main street of Dusty Ford. The November wind carried the scent of sage and distant snow, rattling the wooden shutters of the saloon where raucous laughter spilled into the night. At the edge of town, where the last lamplight struggled against the darkness, a stagecoach creaked to a halt. Eliza Hart clutched her worn carpetbag with trembling fingers, her cheap wedding dress already collecting dust from the journey. 23 years old, with auburn hair pinned beneath a simple bonnet, she had traveled 3 weeks from Ohio to meet the man who had paid her passage, Harlan Pike, blacksmith and her husband-to-be through mail-order arrangement. "End of the line, miss," the driver called down, spitting tobacco juice into the dirt. "This here's Dusty Ford." The dress, ordered from a catalog and sewn by her own hands, felt like paper against her skin. She'd used the last of her mother's lace for the collar, a small rebellion against the plain practicality Pike had demanded in his letters. Now, standing in this foreign place, she wondered if even that tiny vanity had been foolish. Pike emerged from the shadows of the smithy, broader than his letters had suggested, his face ruddy with drink. "You're late," he growled, not bothering with pleasantries. His eyes raked over her like she was livestock at auction. "Dress is too fancy. I told you simple." "Mr. Pike, it's husband to you now, or will be once Reverend Grady says the words." He grabbed her arm, his grip tight enough to bruise. "Come on, wedding's tonight." The church sat squat and weathered at the town's heart, its bell tower leaning slightly eastward. Inside, a handful of townspeople had gathered not for celebration, but for spectacle. Eliza recognized the predatory curiosity in their eyes. She was not the first mail-order bride to pass through Dusty Ford. Reverend Grady, thin as a fence post and twice as rigid, rushed through the vows, his words blurred together, meaningless sounds that sealed her fate. When Pike kissed her, his breath reeked of whiskey and onions. The small congregation clapped half-heartedly, already losing interest. The wedding supper at Pike's quarters behind the smithy consisted of cold beans and harder bread. Pike drank steadily from a brown bottle, his mood darkening with each swallow. Eliza sat rigid on a wooden stool, her stomach too knotted to eat. "Paid good money for you," Pike muttered, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. $50 plus passage. You'd best be worth it." "I can cook and sew," Eliza offered quietly. "I kept house for my father until—" "I didn't buy you for conversation." He stood abruptly, swaying. "Get up!" The fear she'd held at bay during the long journey crashed over her like a flash flood. This was not the life promised in the advertisement, a hard-working tradesman seeking companionship in the frontier. This was something else entirely. When Pike lunged for her, Eliza's survival instincts, honed by years of dodging her father's drunken rages, took over. She twisted away, but his hand caught her sleeve. The cheap fabric tore with a sound like thunder in the small room. "You little—" Pike's face contorted with rage. Eliza grabbed the nearest object, an iron poker, and swung wildly. It connected with Pike's shoulder, sending him stumbling backward. She didn't wait to see if he'd fall. Clutching her torn dress, she bolted through the door into the Wyoming night. The town was quieter now. Most folks settled in for the evening. Eliza ran blindly, her wedding shoes slipping on the loose stones. Behind her, she heard Pike's roar of fury, then the thunder of boots as his drinking companions joined the chase. "The bride's running Pike's bride done run off." She veered off the main street, plunging into the grassland beyond town. The prairie grass, gray-brown in the moonlight, caught at her skirts. The tear in her dress widened with each stride, the fabric separating along the seam her nervous fingers had sewn just days before. Her lungs burned. Her feet, unused to the rough terrain, screamed with each step, but the sound of pursuit drove her forward. She crested a small rise and nearly tumbled down the other side. where a dry creek bed cut through the landscape. That's when she saw him, a lone figure on horseback, silhouetted against the stars. The rider was still as stone, watching her desperate flight with an unreadable expression. For a moment, Eliza thought he might be one of Pike's men, positioned to cut off her escape. Then Pike and 3 others appeared at the rise behind her, their torches painting wild shadows on the ground. "There she is, circle around. Boys." The horseman moved then, spurring his mount forward. But instead of joining the pursuit, he positioned himself between Eliza and her pursuers. "Evening, Pike," the rider said, his voice low and steady as a river. "Bit late for a fox hunt." "Get out of the way." "Boone." Pike snarled. "This ain't your business. That's my wife." Calder Boone Eliza recognized the name from town gossip at the stage stop. A widower who ran cattle on a spread east of town. A man who kept to himself and paid his debts. "Don't see a wife," Boone replied calmly. "I see a scared woman with a torn dress and men acting like wolves. I paid for her fair and square." "You pay for cattle, Pike, not people." One of Pike's companions, emboldened by liquor, made to circle around Boone's horse. The rancher's hand moved to his hip, not drawing the pistol there, just resting on it. The message was clear. "You want to make an enemy of me, Boone." Pike's voice held genuine surprise. The blacksmith was used to getting his way through intimidation. "I want to go home and check on my stock," Boone said. "Question is whether you'll let me do that peaceful-like." The standoff stretched taut as fence wire. Eliza stood frozen, aware that her fate balanced on this moment. Then, without looking at her, Boone shrugged out of his worn-of-wool coat and tossed it in her direction. It landed at her feet, heavy and warm. "Cold night for torn clothes," he said simply. Pike took a step forward, but Boone's horse shifted, blocking him. "She's mine by law." "Then let the law sort it come morning. Deputy Vale can hear your case when he's sober." "You can't just—" "I can, and I am." For the first time, steel entered Boone's voice. "The lady's coming with me. You got issue with that? We can discuss it now or in town tomorrow. Your choice." Pike's face worked through several shades of red. His companions, less invested in the conflict, began to edge backward. Finally, Pike spat in the dirt. "This ain't over, Boone. Not by half. I'll have the law on you and her both." "Looking forward to it," Boone replied mildly. He glanced down at Eliza for the first time. "You planning to use that coat or just admire it?" With shaking hands, Eliza picked up the coat and wrapped it around herself. It smelled of leather and wood smoke, and it covered the worst of the damage to her dress. Pike and his men retreated, their torches bobbing like angry fireflies back toward town. Only when they disappeared over the rise did Boone dismount. He stood a respectful distance from Eliza, making no move to approach. "Calder Boone," he said, touching his hat brim. "I've got a ranch about an hour's ride east. You're welcome to shelter there tonight. Tomorrow, we can figure out what's what." I don't—" Eliza's voice cracked. Everything had happened so fast. This morning, she'd been a hopeful bride. Now she was a runaway in a torn dress, dependent on a stranger's kindness. "You don't have to decide anything tonight," Boone said, seeming to read her thoughts. "But you can't stay out here, and going back to town—" He didn't need to finish. Eliza looked at this quiet man who'd placed himself between her and danger without being asked. His face, weathered by sun and wind, held no judgment, no calculation, just a simple offer of help. The mail-order bride's dress was torn at midnight. The quiet rancher just asked, "Come home with me." The words hung in the air between them, soft as the starlight. Such a simple question, but it held the weight of a new world, a different future than the one she'd fled. "I don't want to bring trouble to your door," Eliza whispered. "Ma'am, trouble's been at my door before. It generally knows to wipe its feet." A ghost of a smile crossed his features. Besides, my sister-in-law May would skin me alive if I left a woman in distress on the prairie. Eliza made her choice. It wasn't really a choice at all between the unknown kindness of this man and the known brutality of Pike. Between the open range and the prison of that smithy. "Thank you," she said simply. Boone helped her onto his horse, careful not to touch more than necessary to steady her. He swung up behind her, leaving proper space between them. As they started east, Eliza asked, "Why did you help me?" He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "My wife died 3 years back. Fever took her. But before that, she taught me something about how folks should treat each other. With respect, with kindness." Seems like Pike never learned that lesson. They rode in silence after that, the prairie spreading endless under the stars. Behind them, Dusty Ford squatted like a bad dream. Ahead, the land rolled toward distant mountains, purple-black against the sky. At a shallow river crossing, Boone's horse picked its way carefully among the stones. The water ran low this late in the year, barely reaching the animal's fetlocks. On the far bank, a coyote watched them pass, its eyes gleaming before it melted back into the sage. "Almost there," Boone said as they climbed the opposite bank. "See that light? That's the ranch house." Eliza peered through the darkness and saw it a warm yellow glow in the distance. Steady as hope. Her wedding dress was ruined, her plans destroyed, her future uncertain. But for the first time since stepping off the stagecoach, she could breathe. "Mr. Boone," she began. "Just Boone is fine, or Calder, if you prefer." Calder. The name felt strange on her tongue. "What happens tomorrow when Pike comes?" "Tomorrow we deal with tomorrow," he said. "Tonight, you're safe. May will fix you up with proper clothes and a hot meal. We'll figure the rest as it comes." The ranch materialized from the darkness, a solid log house with a wide porch, outbuildings arranged in practical order, everything speaking of hard work and careful planning. Dogs barked at their approach, then quieted at Boone's whistle. A woman appeared in the doorway, lamplight haloing her graying hair. May Boone, Eliza guessed. The woman took one look at Eliza's torn dress and Boone's missing coat and seemed to understand everything. "Lord have mercy," May said, hurrying down the steps. "Bring her inside. Calder, I'll heat water for a bath." As Boone helped her dismount, Eliza caught his sleeve. "I don't know how to repay." "No debt between folks doing right," he interrupted gently. "That's another thing my wife taught me." May whisked Eliza inside, clucking like a mother hen. The house was warm, smelling of bread and coffee, real furniture, not the rough planks of Pike's quarters, pictures on the walls, a life built with care. Through the window, Eliza watched Boone lead his horse to the barn, his movements unhurried despite the late hour. In the distance, she could see the faint lights of Dusty Ford. Pike would come tomorrow, bringing his anger and his claims of ownership. The law might side with him. The town certainly would. But tonight, in this house where kindness lived, Eliza Hart allowed herself one moment of peace. She'd crossed more than just a river to get here. She'd crossed from one life to another, and there would be no going back. The tear in her wedding dress had torn open her future, and through that rip, something new might grow. If she was brave enough to let it. The first light of dawn painted the Boone Ranch in shades of gold and rose. Eliza woke in a real bed for the first time in weeks, May's borrowed nightgown soft against her skin. Through the window, she could see the vast expanse of grassland rolling toward the mountains, so different from Ohio's green hills. A knock at the door made her heart race. "Just me, dear," May's voice came through. "Brought you some proper clothes." May Boone entered with an armful of practical garments, a brown wool skirt, white blouse, and sturdy boots. "These were mine when I was younger," she said, setting them on the chair, "before I got brought as a barn door." "Thank you," Eliza said, fingering the good quality wool. "I'll work to repay." "None of that talk." May's weathered face softened. "Calder told me some of what happened, that Pike's a snake in boots. Always has been. You did right to run. As Eliza dressed, May chatted, filling the silence with easy talk. Ranch has been in the Boone family since '71. Calder and his brother James started with nothing but grit and a handful of longhorns. When James passed, I stayed on. Where else would I go? This is home. The kitchen was already warm when they entered. Calder sitting at the long table with coffee and accounts. He looked up, nodding approval at Eliza's transformed appearance. "Morning. Sleep all right?" "Yes, thank you." Eliza felt suddenly shy in the daylight. This man had saved her, but he was still a stranger. "Best you learn the lay of things," May said, bustling about with breakfast. "Ranch runs about 3,000 head, though we're down some after the summer drought. We've got Ephraim, he's our main hand. Comes from Mexico way. Smart as a whip and loyal as they come. Then there's young Noah from the Hendricks place. His folks died of fever last winter, so he helps out for board and learning. Noah's out checking the east pasture." Calder added, "He'll be back for noon meal." Through the window, Eliza saw a rider approaching a compact man with sun-darkened skin and an easy smile. He dismounted near the barn with fluid grace. "That's Ephraim," May said. "Probably coming to report some catastrophe. It's Tuesday, after all." But when Ephraim entered, his usually cheerful face was serious. "Calder, we got company coming. Saw dust rising from the town road. 3, maybe 4 riders." Calder set down his coffee cup. "Pike." "Most likely." Ephraim's dark eyes found Eliza. "You must be the senora who caused such excitement. Ephraim Juarez, at your service." "She's not a senora," Calder corrected quietly. "The marriage wasn't completed." Understanding flashed across Ephraim's face. "Ah, well then, senorita, welcome to Rancho Boone, where the coffee is strong and the gossip travels slower than a lame burro." Despite her fear, Eliza found herself almost smiling. Then the sound of horses reached them, and the moment shattered. Pike rode up like he owned the world. Deputy Marcus Vale beside him. 2 other men Eliza didn't recognize completed the party. Vale, a thin man with watery eyes, looked uncomfortable in his badge. "Boone," Pike's voice boomed across the yard. "Send out my wife." Calder stepped onto the porch, rifle casual in his hands. Not pointed at anyone. Just there. "Morning. Pike, deputy. Fine day for a ride." "Don't play games," Vale said, trying for authority. "This man says you're harboring his lawful wife." "Harboring." Calder's eyebrow rose. "That's an interesting word for offering shelter to a woman in distress." "We were married legal," Pike insisted. Grady said the words, "Papers were signed." "Under what circumstances?" Calder asked mildly. May appeared in the doorway, and her presence seemed to shift something in Vale's expression. Everyone knew May Boone's reputation, a woman who'd helped birth half the county's children and sat with the dying. Her word carried weight. "Marcus Vale," she said sternly. "Does your mother know you're out here helping a man chase down a frightened girl?" Vale flushed. "Now, May, this is legal business." "Legal doesn't mean right." She folded her arms. "Eliza Hart came here with a torn dress and bruises forming. You want to explain how that's legal?" "Women need discipline," Pike began. But Calder cut him off. "Careful how you finish that sentence." The rifle shifted slightly. "There are laws about marriage, true, but there are also laws about assault, and contracts signed under duress." "Duress," Pike scoffed. "She came willing, I paid." "How much did you pay?" Eliza stepped onto the porch, surprising everyone. Her voice shook, but she forced herself to continue. $50 plus passage. You said like I was a horse or a plow." The agency promised me a husband seeking companionship, a partnership." Her chin lifted. "Not a master seeking property." Vale shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Pike. Miss Hart, she corrected firmly. A marriage requires consent. Free and clear consent. Did I look willing when I ran from him last night? Deputy, the fourth man, who'd been silent, spoke up. Boss, maybe we should— Shut up, Franklin, Pike snarled. He turned back to Eliza. You took my money under false pretenses? I took passage to start a new life. Eliza replied, You're the one who lied about what that life would be. Ephraim had positioned himself by the barn, casual but ready. Young Noah appeared from the direction of the pasture, taking in the scene with wide eyes. The law's the law. Vale tried again, but his heart wasn't in it. A wife belongs with her husband. Then let's ask Judge Benjamin. Calder suggested, He'll be through on circuit in 2 weeks. Until then, Miss Hart can stay here, under May's protection. If the judge says the marriage stands, we'll abide. If not, he shrugged. 2 weeks, Pike's face purpled. She could run off. Where would I go? Eliza asked quietly. I have no money, no family here. Mr. Boone is offering Christian charity, nothing more. May snorted. More Christian than some I could name who warm church pews every Sunday. Vale looked between Pike's rage and the steady calm of the Boone ranch. He made his choice. 2 weeks seems fair. Judge Benjamin can sort it out proper. This is robbery, Pike shouted. Vale, I'll have your badge. Try it, the deputy said wearily. But remember, I know about your other brides. Pike, the ones who didn't last long enough to run. A chill ran through the group. Pike's face went from red to white. You can't prove— Maybe not, but Judge Benjamin might be interested to hear about Mary Todd. And Susan Hale, both mail-order brides, both dead within a year of accidents. Eliza felt her knees weaken. May's hand found her elbow, steadying her. Get off my land, Pike, Calder said. And now the rifle was definitely pointed in a specific direction. Come back with the judge or not at all. Pike looked ready to charge. Consequences be damned. But Franklin grabbed his arm. Come on, boss. Not worth getting shot over a skirt. They left in a cloud of dust and curses. Pike shouting threats about burning the ranch and teaching Boone respect. Vale lingered a moment. Watch yourself. He told Calder, Pike's got friends, and he holds grudges like a banker holds notes. Appreciate the warning. When they were gone, Eliza sank onto the porch step. 2 other women. Rumors, May said gently, but believable ones. Mary Todd fell down the well. Susan Hale got kicked by a horse, both after showing up in town with bruises. Dear God, Eliza buried her face in her hands. I almost— But you didn't, Calder said firmly. You ran. You survived. That took courage. Noah approached shyly. Miss, are you really going to stay? Looking at the boy's hopeful face. Eliza felt something shift inside her. For now, yes. Good. His grin was infectious. May's been saying we need more help with the chickens. Do you know chickens? Despite everything, Eliza found herself smiling. I know chickens. The day took on a strange normalcy after that. May showed Eliza around the ranch, the henhouse, the garden plot, the root cellar. Everything was organized with practical efficiency. But there were touches of beauty too, flowers by the porch, curtains in the windows. Calder's wife, Grace, she loved pretty things. May explained as they collected eggs. Tried to bring some softness to this hard land. When the fever took her, she sighed. Calder shut down like winter, barely spoke for a year. Eliza thought of the man who'd placed himself between her and danger without hesitation. He seems kind. He is too kind, sometimes, but he's also nobody's fool. May studied her. Don't mistake his quiet for weakness. That man's got steel in him when needed. At the noon meal, Eliza met the full household. Noah chattered about horses and cattle, while Ephraim told outrageous stories that made even Calder crack a smile. The food was simple but good: beef stew, fresh bread, preserved peaches. "You'll work for your keep," Calder said matter-of-factly. "Help May with the house, the garden, whatever needs doing. That way, nobody can say you're charity." "I want to earn my way," Eliza agreed quickly. "Tomorrow, I'll teach you to shoot," he added. And when she looked surprised, he explained, "Everyone on a ranch needs to know firearms. For wolves, injured animals, protection." The unspoken hung in the air: protection from Pike. That evening, as Eliza helped May with dishes, they heard riders approaching again. Everyone tensed, but it was only neighbors, the Winfields, from the next ranch over. "Heard there was some excitement," Thomas Winfield said, his weathered face curious. "Pike's at the saloon, telling anyone who'll listen that Boone stole his bride." "Is that the story?" Calder asked dryly. "Well, we figured there might be another version," Elizabeth Winfield said, eyeing Eliza kindly. "One that makes more sense. May told it straight, and by the end—" Elizabeth was shaking her head. "That Pike's bad business, always has been. You did right. Calder." But Thomas looked worried. "Pike's stirring up trouble, saying you're harboring a runaway wife, that it's against God's law. Some folks are listening." "Let them," Calder said. "Judge Benjamin will sort truth from lies." After the Winfields left, bearing fresh bread and the real story to spread, Eliza found herself on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains purple. Calder joined her, keeping respectful distance. "I've brought trouble to your door after all," she said quietly. "Pike brought his own trouble. You just shone a light on it." He was quiet a moment. "What you said today, about consent and partnership, that was well spoken." "My mother believed in women's rights," Eliza admitted. "She died when I was 12, but she taught me to read, to think. Father didn't approve. When he died, I had nothing left but debts, and the mail-order bride advertisement seemed like escape." "Escape to prison is no escape at all." "No," she agreed. "It's not." She looked at him sideways. "Your wife, Grace May, says she was special." A shadow crossed his face. "She was smart, funny, stubborn as a mule when she set her mind to something. The fever took her in 3 days. Nothing Doc Stevenson could do." He cleared his throat. "After that, I figured I'd had my chance at happiness. Once is more than some folks get."
"That's a lonely way to live."
"Maybe, but it's uncomplicated." He stood. "You should get some rest. Tomorrow we start making you a proper ranch hand." That night, Eliza lay in the borrowed bed listening to the night sounds: coyotes in the distance, wind in the cottonwoods, the creak of the house settling. Somewhere in town, Pike was plotting. In 2 weeks, a judge would decide her fate. But for now, she was safe. More than safe, she was welcomed, valued, treated as a person rather than property. It was more than she'd dared hope for when she'd stepped on that stagecoach in Ohio. Through her window, she could see lights from the bunkhouse where Ephraim lived, and the main house where Calder kept his lonely watch. This ranch was a world unto itself, carved from wild land by determination and held together by loyalty. She thought of Calder's words, "Nobody owns anybody here." Such a simple concept, yet revolutionary in its way. Tomorrow, she would learn to shoot a rifle. She would work in the garden, tend the chickens, earn her place. And if Pike came again, well, she was done running. The torn wedding dress hanging in the wardrobe was reminder enough she'd already survived the worst night of her life. Whatever came next, she would meet it standing. In the main house, unseen by Eliza. Calder sat at his desk writing in his journal, a habit Grace had started him on. His usually brief entries ran longer tonight. "The woman has spine, faced Pike down proper when many would have crumbled. May's taken to her already. Even Ephraim approves. And he's particular about people. Don't know what Benjamin will decide, but I know what's right. A person should choose their own path, not have it chosen by others with money and threats. We'll see what 2 weeks bring. For now, she's under Boone protection, and that still means something in this country. I hope. He set down his pen and looked toward the guest room window, where lamplight still glowed. Then he banked the fire and headed to bed, rifle close at hand. The world was full of Pike's men who thought strength meant domination, but this ranch had been built on different principles, and he'd defend them, come what may. The sandstorm came without warning on the third day. Eliza had been practicing with the carbine, Calder patiently correcting her stance, when Ephraim rode in hard from the north range. His horse was lathered, and he pulled his bandana down from his face to shout, "Storm coming, big one!" Already the horizon had turned an ominous brown red, like dried blood spreading across the sky. The wind picked up, carrying the first stinging grains of sand. "How long?" Calder asked, scanning the range. "Hour, maybe less. The herd scattered from here to Sunday." Ephraim wheeled his mount. "I'll get Noah. We need to push them to the sheltered valley." "I'll help," Eliza said without thinking. Both men looked at her. She'd been riding May's gentle mare around the ranch, but working cattle in a sandstorm was different. "You ever work a herd?" Calder asked. "No, but I can learn. You need every hand." He studied her for a heartbeat, then nodded. "Get a bandana from May. Cover everything but your eyes. And stay close to me." Within minutes, the ranch was in controlled chaos. May secured shutters and brought the chickens into the barn. Noah appeared from the east, driving a knot of cattle before him. The boy rode like he was born to the saddle, fearless despite the building storm. Eliza mounted the mare, her split skirt another loan from May practical for the work. Calder handed her a coiled rope. "You won't need to rope anything. Just help keep them bunched. The cattle know the way to shelter, but panic makes them stupid." They rode out to meet the scattered herd, and Eliza got her first real taste of ranch work. The cattle, sensing the storm, were skittish. A big steer tried to break east, and without thinking, Eliza urged her mare to cut it off. The horse knew her business better than her rider, wheeling smartly to turn the animal back. "Natural instinct," Ephraim called approvingly. "You'll make a vaquera yet." The wind grew teeth, driving sand that found every gap in clothing. Eliza's eyes streamed tears, but she kept riding, kept pushing. Beside her, Calder worked with economical grace, anticipating the cattle's moves, his rope snaking out occasionally to turn a stubborn animal. They were halfway to the valley when the storm hit in earnest. The world turned brown-black, visibility dropping to yards. Eliza lost sight of Noah, could barely make out Calder's shape beside her. The cattle lowed in fear, milling dangerously. "Stay together," Calder's voice barely carried over the howling wind. "Follow my lead." He began to sing an old trail song with a steady rhythm. Ephraim picked it up. Then Noah's young voice joined from somewhere in the murk. Even Eliza hummed along, not knowing the words but understanding the purpose. The cattle, trained to associate the song with calm movement, began to settle into a walk. For an hour that felt like a day, they pushed through the storm. Sand worked its way into everything: mouth, nose, ears. Eliza's mare stumbled once, and she nearly went over the horse's head, but managed to keep her seat. Then, blessed relief, the ground dipped, and they were in the sheltered valley. The wind still howled overhead, but the worst of the sand stayed above the rim. The cattle, finding good grass and water from the spring creek, settled quickly. "Everyone accounted for," Calder called. "Here." Noah emerged from the dust like a small ghost, grinning despite everything. "Got my group in. All present. Jefe." Ephraim confirmed. "Lost maybe a dozen head, but they'll shelter somewhere." Calder looked at Eliza, who was trying to shake sand from her hair. "You did good. Real good." I mostly just tried not to fall off, she admitted. That's half of ranching right there. Ephraim laughed. They waited out the worst of the storm in the lee of a rock formation, sharing water from canteens and hard biscuits from saddlebags. Noah entertained them with exaggerated stories of his heroics, while Ephraim told tales of worse storms in Mexico. Once in Chihuahua, he said, a sandstorm lasted 3 days. When it cleared, whole town had moved a mile east. The church, the cantina, everything. Took them a week to find where they'd started.
That's not possible,
Noah protested. You calling me a liar? Pequeño. Ephraim's eyes danced with mischief. I was there, saw it myself. Were you drinking tequila at the time? Calder asked dryly. Well, perhaps a small amount. For the dust, you understand. Even Eliza found herself laughing. Here in this wild place, covered in dirt and sand, she felt more alive than she had in years. The fear that had driven her from Ohio, the desperation that had answered Pike's advertisement, it all seemed to belong to another woman. When the storm finally began to ease, they headed back. The ranch looked like it had been painted with dust, but everything important had survived. May met them with hot coffee and towels, clucking over them like a mother hen.
Look at you all like you've been rolled in flour for frying.
She helped Eliza shake out her hair.
But you brought the herd in safe.
Most of it, Calder confirmed. We'll search for strays tomorrow. That evening, cleaned and fed. They gathered in the main room. The storm had knocked out Pike's planned moral judgment at the church. Even he wouldn't venture out in such weather. But May had heard from the neighbors that Reverend Grady was planning to hold it tomorrow instead.
Moral judgment,
Eliza repeated bitterly.
From a man who took money to perform a sham marriage.
Grady's been in Pike's pocket for years, May explained. Pike helped fund the church building, so Grady turns blind eyes and deaf ears. What exactly happens at this judgment? Eliza asked. Calder's face darkened. Community gathering, ostensibly to determine right from wrong in disputes. In practice, it's often just sanctioned gossip and shaming. And Pike will paint me as a Jezebel who seduced you away from righteousness. Eliza guessed. Likely.
Then I'll speak my piece too.
Her chin lifted. I won't be judged by hypocrites without answer. The next morning dawned clear. The storm having scoured the sky blue, they rode to town as a group. Calder, Eliza, May, Ephraim, and Noah. Other ranchers joined them on the road. Some nodding greeting, others looking away. The community was clearly divided. The church was packed. Pike sat in the front row like a wronged saint, Deputy Vale beside him looking uncomfortable. Reverend Grady, thin and self-righteous, stood at the pulpit. We gather today to address a moral crisis in our community. Grady intoned, a sacred bond of marriage has been broken. A woman has fled her lawful husband, taking shelter with another man. Such behavior threatens the very fabric of our society. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Eliza felt eyes on her like brands. Mr. Pike, Grady continued, please share your grievance. Pike stood, assuming a wounded air. I paid good money to bring a bride to this lonely frontier. Paid for her passage, her clothes, everything proper and legal. We were married right here in this church, before God and witnesses. Then she ran off in the night, like a thief. You tore my dress, Eliza said clearly, standing. You drank yourself mean and grabbed at me like I was property. A husband's rights, Pike began, are not to brutalize. Thomas Winfield interrupted from the back. We all heard about Mary Todd and Susan Hale. Pike. Rumors and lies. Pike's mask slipped, showing the anger beneath. This woman bewitched Boone, turned him against Christian marriage. I offered shelter to someone in need. Calder said calmly, as Scripture commands. Scripture also says wives submit to husbands, Grady pronounced. It also says husbands should love wives as Christ loved the church. Elizabeth Winfield called out, with sacrifice and gentleness. See any of that in Pike? The room erupted in arguments. Some sided with traditional authority, others with basic human decency. Through it all, Eliza noticed Grady and Pike exchanging worried glances. Enough. Grady banged his Bible on the pulpit. The law's clear. This woman is Pike's legal wife. She must return to him or be cast out from decent society. Then let's talk about law, a new voice said from the back. Everyone turned. A small man in a travel-worn suit stood in the doorway. Samuel Carson, attorney at law, passing through and heard there was quite a debate happening. This is a church matter, Grady protested. Marriage is a legal contract as well as religious sacrament. Carson replied, walking forward. And contracts require certain elements. Mutual consent, for instance. Full disclosure. Legal capacity of both parties. He looked directly at Pike. Mr. Pike, did you fully disclose your circumstances in your correspondence with Miss Hart? Your temperament, your expectations? I said I needed a wife, Pike growled. And did Miss Hart consent freely to the marriage, or was she coerced upon arrival? She went through with it. After traveling thousands of miles at your expense, arriving penniless in a strange town, with no alternatives presented. Carson turned to the crowd. In contract law, we call that duress. Who asked you to interfere? Vale demanded. Justice asks me. Carson replied simply. And I believe Judge Benjamin will be very interested in the circumstances of this marriage, and the previous marriages of Mr. Pike that ended in tragedy. Pike's face went purple. You can't prove anything. Perhaps not about the past, but the present. Miss Hart's torn dress was seen by multiple witnesses. Her fear was evident. Reverend, did you counsel this couple before marriage, ensure both understood the commitment, or did you simply speak words over a frightened woman fresh off a stagecoach? Grady's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. May stood. I've birthed babies and buried the dead in this county for 20 years. I've seen good marriages and bad. What Pike calls marriage is ownership, plain and simple. And we fought a war to end ownership of human beings. Hear, hear, several voices called. If Eliza Hart says the marriage was forced, I believe her. Elizabeth Winfield declared, and I'll tell Judge Benjamin so. More voices joined in support. Pike saw the tide turning and made a fatal error. He lunged toward Eliza. You lying witch! You're mine by law! Calder moved to intercept, but Eliza didn't need protection. She sidestepped Pike's charge and, using a move Ephraim had taught her, swept his feet. Pike crashed into a pew, sprawling ungracefully. I am no one's property, she said clearly. Not my father's, not yours, not any man's. I am a free woman, and I choose where I go and who I trust. Assault, Pike sputtered from the floor. She assaulted me. I saw a woman defend herself, Carson said mildly. Deputy Vale, will you be charging her? Vale looked at Pike, at the crowd, at his own conscience. I need to think on it. Until Judge Benjamin arrives, everyone keeps the peace. That's an order. The meeting broke up in chaos. Pike stormed out, throwing dark threats. Grady retreated to his vestry. The townspeople milled about, discussing what they'd witnessed. Carson approached Eliza and called her. I'll be staying in town until the circuit judge arrives. Pro bono, of course. Justice shouldn't depend on ability to pay. Why help a stranger? Eliza asked. Because someone helped me once, when I needed it most. Carson tipped his hat. Besides, I do enjoy puncturing the self-righteous, occupational hazard of the legal profession. On the ride back to the ranch, spirits were mixed. They'd won a moral victory, but Pike was still dangerous. He'll try something. Ephraim predicted. Men like that don't accept defeat. Let him try, Noah said fiercely. We'll be ready. That night, Eliza found herself unable to sleep. She walked out to the porch, finding Calder already there, keeping watch. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked.
Too much spinning in my head.
She sat on the other chair, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders.
Today, when Pike came at me, I wasn't afraid. For the first time in my life.
I wasn't afraid of an angry man. You've found your strength.
Or it found me.
She was quiet a moment.
Your wife, Grace, would she have stood up like that?
A soft smile crossed Calder's face. Grace would have had Pike on the floor in half the time and lectured him while he was down there. She was fierce about justice. You must miss her terribly. Every day. But... He paused, choosing words carefully. Lately, the missing hurts less, like a wound finally starting to heal clean instead of festering. They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars wheel overhead. In the distance, a coyote called and was answered. The ranch slept peacefully around them, but both knew this was the calm before another storm. "What will you do if Judge Benjamin rules against me?" Eliza asked quietly. "We'll face that if it comes. But Carson seems to know his business, and you have the truth on your side. The truth doesn't always win." "No," Calder admitted, "but it's still worth fighting for." A sound made them both tense horses, moving carefully in the darkness. Calder reached for his rifle, but then Ephraim's whistle came from the barn. "All clear." "Just checking the perimeter," Ephraim reported, materializing from the shadows. "Saw fresh tracks by the creek. Someone's been watching the ranch." "Pike's men." "Most likely." Ephraim's teeth flashed white in the darkness. "I may have left some surprises for anyone thinking to sneak up. Nothing harmful, just noisy." As if on cue, a clatter erupted from the direction of the creek, followed by cursing, tin cans and bells. Eliza guessed. Ephraim's surprises. "That'll be Franklin." Calder said calmly. "Pike's shadow. Not the brightest star in the sky." They heard the hasty retreat of a horse. Ephraim chuckled. "He'll have interesting bruises tomorrow. Fell right into my pots and pans special." "You're enjoying this too much," Calder chided, but his eyes held amusement.
"The man needs hobbies. Jefe."
When Ephraim melted back into the night to continue his rounds, Eliza turned to Calder.
"This is my fault, bringing danger to your door."
"Danger was already here," Calder said firmly. "Pike's been a blight on this county for years. Someone needed to stand up to him. Grace would have done it years ago if she'd known about Mary Todd and Susan Hale. But the risk to the ranch, to everyone. What's the point of building something good if you won't defend it, if you won't use it to shelter those who need it?" He stood, checking the rifle. "You're not a burden, Eliza. You're a catalyst. Sometimes that's what a place needs, someone to spark change." Before she could respond, he moved off to check the other approaches to the house. Eliza stayed on the porch, pulling the shawl tighter. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Pike wouldn't give up easily. The law might still side with him. But tonight, she was safe. Tonight, she had allies who saw her as a person, not property. Tonight, under the vast Wyoming sky, she began to believe she might actually win her freedom. In the barn, May's gentle mare nickered softly. From the bunkhouse came the sound of Ephraim's guitar, playing a low melody. The ranch breathed around her, alive and protective.
"I choose this,"
she whispered to the stars.
"Whatever comes, I choose this."
The wind carried her words away across the grassland, where somewhere a frustrated spy nursed his bruises and Pike planned his next move. But here, in this moment, Eliza Hart claimed her ground. The torn wedding dress hanging in her room was just cloth now, its power broken. Tomorrow she would face whatever came with her head high and friends beside her. That was more than she'd ever dared dream when she'd answered that advertisement back in Ohio. It was enough, more than enough. It was the beginning of becoming who she was meant to be. The morning air bit sharp with late winter cold as Calder and Eliza rode out to track the missing cattle. Frost painted the grass silver, and their breath clouded in the dawn light. The storm 3 days past had scattered part of the herd, and with tensions running high with pike, they couldn't afford losses. Tracks lead up toward Skeleton Ridge, Calder observed, studying the ground. Maybe a dozen head, spooked into the high country. Eliza had become comfortable in the saddle over the past week, her natural balance serving her well. She wore May's old wool coat and carried the carbine Calder had taught her to use, looking every inch a ranch hand rather than a runaway bride. They climbed steadily into the foothills, following the trail through stands of pine and across frozen streams. The land grew wilder, more beautiful. Eagles circled overhead, and once they spotted a small herd of elk moving through the trees like ghosts. Grace loved it up here, Calder said unexpectedly. Said it was where earth touched heaven. She was right, Eliza replied softly, taking in the vista of mountains and valleys spread below. They found the cattle in a box canyon, grazing on wind-sheltered grass. But as they approached, Calder suddenly reined in, holding up a hand for silence. Fresh horse tracks crossed the cattle trail shod horses, not wild ones. We're not alone, he murmured. The ambush came from 3 sides: Pike's men Franklin, another tough named Gus Wellington, and Deputy Vale himself emerged from concealment with drawn weapons. Morning, Boone, Vale said, trying for authority but achieving only nervousness. Fancy finding you up here. It's my range, Calder replied evenly. What's your excuse? Following reports of cattle theft, Vale claimed. Anonymous tip that you've been expanding your herd with other folks' stock. That's a lie, Eliza burst out. Nobody asked you, Missy, Franklin sneered. You're coming back with us. Pike's waiting. Like hell, Calder said quietly. The moment stretched taut. 3 guns against 2, and one of those in the hands of someone who'd only been shooting for a week. But Eliza had learned more than marksmanship from Calder. She'd learned to read situations. She saw Vale's discomfort, the way his gun hand trembled slightly. He didn't want to be here, was only following Pike's pressure. Franklin was eager for violence, but looking to Vale for permission. Gus was the dangerous one, cold-eyed and ready. Deputy, Eliza said calmly, you're about to make a choice that will define the rest of your life. Whatever Pike has on you, gambling debts, threats, promises, it's not worth becoming a murderer. Shut up, Franklin snapped, but Vale's face had gone pale. Think about it, Eliza continued. You shoot us up here, claim we were stealing cattle, but Sam Carson's in town, asking questions. The Winfields know we're checking the North Range. Ephraim will come looking. How long before someone finds our bodies with bullets in the back? She's got a point, Marcus. Gus said unexpectedly, this ain't what I signed on for. Intimidation's one thing, but... Pike said, Franklin started. Pike's not here. Calder cut in. And when this goes bad, he won't be the one hanging for murder. You will. Vale's resolve crumbled visibly. I can't do this. I'm done being Pike's dog. He holstered his weapon. Franklin, Gus, we're leaving. You yellow. Franklin's curse was cut short as his horse suddenly screamed and reared. A mountain cat had appeared on the rocks above, drawn by the cattle. The big Tom wasn't hunting, just passing through, but the horses didn't know that. In the chaos of plunging mounts and shouting men, Franklin's gun went off. The bullet whined off rocks near Calder's head. His horse spooked, and for a moment he fought to control it. Eliza, remembering Ephraim's lessons about using what's at hand, grabbed her lariat and with beginner's luck managed to tangle Franklin's gun arm. The cat vanished as quickly as it had appeared. But the damage was done. Franklin was on the ground. Gus was fighting his panicked horse, and Vale had backed well away from the action. Everyone calm down, Calder commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. When the dust settled, Franklin was disarmed and furious. Gus had his horse under control, but his fight gone, and Vale looked like a man who'd seen his own death narrowly avoided. "This is over," Vale declared. "Franklin, Gus, we're done with Pike. I'll face whatever comes, but I won't be party to murder." They left Franklin's gun and departed, Vale leading the way with newfound determination. Calder and Eliza were left with the cattle and the echoes of what might have been. "You handled that well," Calder said as they began pushing the strays back down slope.
"I was terrified,"
Eliza admitted.
"but somehow that made everything clearer. Like I could see all the threads and how they'd unravel."
"Combat does that sometimes. Shows you what matters." He studied her. "You could have stayed quiet. Let me handle it."
"And risk losing, you know."
The words came out before she could stop them, and heat rose in her cheeks.
"I mean, the ranch needs you, May and Noah and—"
"I understand," he said gently,
but something new flickered in his eyes.
They drove the cattle down in companionable silence, both aware that something had shifted between them. As they reached easier ground, Calder began pointing out landmarks, sharing stories of the land, here where he'd found Grace picking wildflowers their first spring, there where James had broken his arm trying to ride an unbroken stallion.
"You carry a lot of ghosts,"
Eliza observed. "We all do. Question is whether we let them guide us or haunt us." They stopped to rest the horses at a sheltered spot with a view across the valley. The ranch looked small from here, but solid, a human mark on the vast landscape, but one that seemed to belong. "Tell me about before." Calder said unexpectedly, "Ohio, your life there." Eliza rarely spoke of it, but here in this high, clean place, with this man who'd shown her only kindness, the words came. "My father ran a dry goods store, respectable enough, but he drank away the profits. Mother tried to hold things together, taught me to read and figure, to think for myself. She died when I was 12, consumption, and after that—" She paused. "Father's drinking got worse, his temper too. I became very good at dodging both fists and bottles." Calder's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. "When I was 16, Theodore Whitman began courting me. Good family, steady prospects. I thought he was my escape. Then one evening, he cornered me behind the church and—" She took a breath. "Let's just say I learned that respectable men could be monsters too. When I told Father, he said I must have encouraged it, that I should be grateful for Whitman's interest." "Eliza." "I survived," she said firmly. "Learned to be invisible, to work hard, to save every penny I could hide. When Father died last year, the debts took everything. The advertisement for mail-order brides seemed like divine providence, a new start, far from anyone who knew my shame." "There's no shame in surviving," Calder said fiercely. "The shame belongs to those who hurt you."
"I'm beginning to believe that, here, with distance and—" She gestured at the mountains, the sky, the good man beside her, with different examples of how people can be. They sat quietly, sharing water from a canteen, letting the truth settle between them like snow. "Grace couldn't have children," Calder said eventually. "Tore her up inside. She wanted to adopt, take in orphans like Noah, but then the fever came and—" He cleared his throat. "I shut down after. Figured if I didn't feel anything, I couldn't lose anything. May kept the ranch running while I went through the motions." "What changed?" "You showed up with a torn dress and fire in your eyes, refusing to be owned." A rueful smile touched his lips, reminded me that staying safe and staying alive aren't the same thing. Their eyes met and held. The air between them crackled with possibility, with the recognition of kindred spirits who'd been broken and were choosing to heal. Eliza felt herself leaning forward slightly, drawn by something stronger than gravity. Then a gunshot echoed across the valley. They were mounted and riding hard before the echo died, the cattle forgotten. As they descended, they could see smoke rising from the direction of the ranch, not the chimney smoke of hearth fires, but the black billowing of destruction. The grain storage shed was fully ablaze when they thundered into the ranch yard. May was organizing a bucket brigade while Ephraim and Noah worked to keep the fire from spreading to the barn. The horses were screaming in fear, and the cattle in the near pasture were pressing against the fences. "Pike's men!" Mays shouted over the roar of flames. "3 of them came while you were gone." Calder leaped from his horse, joining the firefighting effort. Eliza ran to help May, passing buckets until her arms ached. The heat was intense, sparks flying on the wind. If the barn caught, if the fire reached the house... "The horses!" Noah cried. The barn door had caught an ember, small flames licking at the wood. Without thinking, Eliza grabbed a horse blanket, dunked it in the water trough, and ran. The heat hit her like a physical blow, but she beat at the flames with desperate energy. Ephraim appeared beside her with another wet blanket, and together they smothered the nascent fire. It took an hour to bring the shed fire under control, another to ensure no hidden embers remained. By then, the shed was a total loss, months of feed gone, along with equipment and supplies. They gathered in the kitchen, soot-stained and exhausted. May tended a burn on Noah's hand while Ephraim cleaned a cut on his cheek from flying debris. "They rode in bold as brass," May reported. "Said they were looking for stolen cattle. When I told them you were out on the range, they said they'd wait. Next thing, the shed was burning and they were riding off, whooping like savages." "Did Vale?" Calder began. "No, Marcus wasn't with them. Just Franklin, Gus, and that weasel Josiah Morse." So Vale had kept his word. But Pike had other pawns. The message was clear. This was only the beginning. "We can't go on like this," Eliza said quietly. "People are going to get hurt. Maybe I should..." "Don't..." Calder's voice was sharp. "Don't even think about sacrificing yourself. That's not how we do things." "But the ranch can be rebuilt. Feed can be replaced. You can't." He looked around the table. "We're not giving in to terrorism. Tomorrow, I'm riding to town. Sam Carson needs to hear about this, and I'm filing formal charges." "Pike owns half the town," Ephraim pointed out. "Not the half that matters. Not anymore." Calder's determination was steel. Vale turned on him today. Others will too, when pushed. That night, Eliza found herself unable to sleep again. The smell of smoke lingered, and every sound made her heart race. She ventured to the kitchen for water and found Calder at the table, writing by lamplight. "Making a list of losses for the law," he explained. "Carson says documentation matters." She sat across from him, studying his face in the golden light. The scar she'd noticed before ran from his left temple into his hairline, an old wound, white with age. "Battle of Antietam," he said, noticing her gaze. "Bloodiest day of my life, until Grace died." He set down his pen. "I was so young, thought war was about glory. Learn different fast." "Is that why you're so careful with violence, even when provoked?" "Violence is easy. It's the aftermath that's hard. The faces you see when you close your eyes, the what-ifs that eat at you." He rubbed his face. "I've got enough ghosts without adding more." "Pike doesn't share your scruples?" "No, which is why we have to be smarter. Fight him with law, with community, with truth." He paused. "Though I'd be lying if I said part of me doesn't want to ride to his place and settle this frontier style." "What stops you?" "You do." The simple honesty of it made her breath catch. "You deserve better than a protector who solves problems with his fists. You've had enough of that." She reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. His skin was rough from work, warm despite the cool night. "Calder..." "I know it's too soon," he said quietly. "You've been through trauma, and you're dependent on my protection. I won't take advantage of that, but I need you to know you're not just some duty or Christian charity to me. Not anymore." "When did that change?" she whispered. "Maybe when you swept Pike's legs in church. Maybe when you faced down 3 armed men with nothing but words and courage. Or maybe..." He turned his hand palm up, interlacing their fingers.
Maybe when you chose to stay and fight instead of run. I'm tired of running, she admitted. For the first time in my life, I've found something worth standing ground for. They sat in the lamplight, hands linked, each carrying scars but choosing trust. Outside, Ephraim's soft whistle indicated he was on watch. The ranch slept fitfully around them, wounded but not broken. We should try to rest. Calder finally said, tomorrow will be long. As they rose, Eliza made a decision. Standing on her toes, she pressed a soft kiss to his cheek, just brushing the edge of that old scar. Thank you for seeing me as more than a victim. You were never just a victim, he replied, even that first night, in a torn dress and afraid you were magnificent. They parted in the hallway, each to their own room, but something fundamental had changed. The careful walls they'd maintained were crumbling, replaced by something stronger: partnership, trust, the beginnings of love. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Samuel Carson arrived with Judge Benjamin himself a week early for his circuit. The judge was a small, neat man with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Heard there was some excitement brewing, Benjamin said, surveying the burned shed. Thought I'd best come before someone got killed. They gathered in the main room: Calder, Eliza, May, Carson, and the judge. Ephraim and Noah kept watch outside. The story unfolded piece by piece: the false marriage, the escape, the ambush, the arson. Miss Hart, the judge said when they finished, do you wish this marriage annulled? Yes, Eliza said firmly. It was contracted under false pretenses and never... She flushed. Never consummated? I was fleeing for my safety within hours of the ceremony. And these allegations about Mr. Pike's previous brides. Carson produced papers. I've been investigating. Mary Todd's sister in Denver wrote back. Mary sent letters describing beatings before her accident. Susan Hale's father confirmed she tried to leave Pike but was forced back by martial law. Benjamin's face darkened. This is deeply troubling. And the arson? Witnessed by 4 people. Calder confirmed. Yet Pike is a prominent citizen. This will tear the town apart. The judge seemed to wrestle with himself. But law is law. Carson, draw up annulment papers. I'll sign them today. As for the criminal charges, Your Honor, Eliza spoke up. I know Pike has influence. I know choosing justice might cost you. But somewhere, Mary Todd and Susan Hale are watching. They deserve justice too, even if it comes late. Benjamin studied her for a long moment. You're a brave woman, Miss Hart. Very well. I'll issue warrants for Pike and his conspirators on charges of arson, attempted murder, and conspiracy. Vale will have to serve them, if he's truly turned. He has, Calder assured him. After the legal party left, a strange quiet settled over the ranch. The die was cast, now official justice was engaged. Pike would know soon, if he didn't already. He'll run or fight, Ephraim predicted. Men like him don't go quiet to jail. Then we'd best be ready for either, Calder replied. That afternoon, they had unexpected support. The Winfields arrived with lumber for rebuilding. The Sawyers brought feed to replace what was lost. Even crusty Ben McGrath, who'd feuded with James Boone for years, showed up with his sons to help. Don't like Pike, McGrath said simply. Never have. Man who'd burn a neighbor's property would burn anyone's. As the community rallied, Eliza felt something she'd never experienced: belonging. These people were choosing to stand with right against might, and they were including her in their circle. That evening, as she helped May serve supper to all the helpers, Vale arrived. He looked haggard but determined. Serve the warrants, he announced. Pike went crazy, barricaded himself in the smithy with his remaining boys. Says he'll burn the whole town before he goes to jail. How many with him? Calder asked. Maybe 6, but Franklin's talking surrender. The arson charge has them spooked that serious time. What will you do? Vale straightened. My job, finally. We'll surround the smithy at dawn. Either he comes out or we go in. He looked at Eliza. I'm sorry, for everything, for being a coward when you needed law to protect you. You're standing up now, she replied. That matters. After Vale left, the ranch prepared for siege. They didn't know if Pike would make a last desperate attack or flee to the territories. Windows were shuttered, guards posted, weapons loaded. In the midst of preparations, Eliza found a moment with Calder on the porch. The sunset painted the mountains crimson and gold. After tomorrow, one way or another, I'll be legally free, she said. Yes. What then, I mean? I'll work for my keep as long as you'll have me. But, Eliza, he turned to face her fully. When this is over, when you've had time to breathe and think and choose freely, I'd like to court you. Properly. The way you deserve. Her heart soared, but she kept her voice steady. And if I said I don't need time that I've already chosen, I'd say you're the bravest woman I know, but you should still take that time. Make sure you're choosing me and not just safety. His thumb brushed her cheek. I want to be wanted for myself, not as an escape. You are, she whispered. So much more than escape. Noah's shout broke the moment. Riders coming, lots of them! They rushed to defensive positions, but the riders carried torches openly, not an attack, but a procession. Half the town, it seemed, had ridden out to the Boone Ranch. Thomas Winfield led them. Thought you should know Pike tried to run. Vale and a posse caught him at Beaver Creek. He's in custody, along with 3 others. Franklin turned witness for leniency. The relief was overwhelming. May actually sat down hard on the porch steps. It's over. The immediate threat. Carson confirmed, riding up. There will be a trial, testimony needed, but Pike won't hurt anyone again. The impromptu celebration lasted hours. People who'd been afraid to speak against Pike for years finally shared their stories. The community began to heal from its long intimidation. As the crowd finally dispersed, Eliza stood with Calder watching the last riders disappear into darkness. You did this, he said quietly. By standing up to him, you gave everyone else courage. We did this, she corrected. All of us. The moon rose full and bright, washing the ranch in silver. The burned shed stood as a reminder of the fight, but already plans were made for rebuilding. The ranch would go on, stronger for surviving the test. So what now? Eliza asked. Now we rebuild. We help the town heal. We prepare for trial. He smiled. And I court you properly, Miss Hart, if you'll allow it. I suppose that would be acceptable. Mr. Boone, she replied with mock formality. They stood together in the moonlight, 2 damaged souls who'd found strength in each other. The future stretched before them, uncertain but no longer frightening. They'd faced the worst and survived. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, testimony to give, a ranch to run, a relationship to build on foundations of mutual respect rather than desperate need. But tonight, they were simply Calder and Eliza, choosing each other freely for the first time. The torn wedding dress had been packed away. Its purpose served. In its place grew something real, not a transaction or an escape, but a partnership built on courage, trust, and the radical notion that love should be freely given, not taken by force. The Wyoming wind sang through the grasslands, and the stars wheeled overhead, and 2 people who'd thought themselves too broken for happiness discovered they were wrong. It was enough for tonight. Tomorrow, they would begin building the rest of their lives. The drought came early that year, turning the grass brown by May and dropping the creek to a trickle. Calder stood at the rise overlooking his land, watching dust devils dance across what should have been green pasture. Beside him, Eliza shaded her eyes against the merciless sun. The Shoshone were right, she said quietly. Chief Joseph Tawa sent word through his granddaughter the Rains have forgotten this land. 3 weeks had passed since Pike's arrest. The trial was set for next month, but life on the ranch couldn't pause for legal proceedings. Cattle needed water, and water was becoming scarce. We'll need to move the herd to the mountain springs, Calder decided. It'll mean grazing on traditional Shoshone hunting grounds. Will they allow it? Only one way to find out. He turned his horse. Feel up to some diplomacy. They rode north toward the Shoshone settlement, bringing gifts, coffee, flour, and most importantly, respect. The landscape changed as they climbed, scrub giving way to pine, the air cooling with altitude. Chief Joseph Tawa received them in his lodge. He was older than Eliza expected, face mapped with decades of sun and wisdom, but his eyes remained sharp. His granddaughter. Sarah Tawa, who'd learned English at the mission school, translated. The white rancher and the woman who stood against the evil man. Chief Tawa said through Sarah, "You are known to us. We come seeking help." Calder said simply, "The drought threatens our cattle. Your people know water sources, we don't. We wish to make an agreement." "Your people take and take," the chief replied. "Land, buffalo, water. Now you ask for more." "Not take, share." Eliza leaned forward. "What benefits us could benefit you. A partnership." Chief Tawa studied her. "You speak differently than most whites. Explain." Pike and others like him dam streams, claim all water for themselves, but Calder believes water belongs to all human and animal alike. If we work together, we can ensure everyone has enough. Pretty words, but words are wind. "Then let our actions speak," Calder offered. "Help us find water for the cattle. In return, we share access to our protected springs year-round. Your people can hunt our land freely. And when we drive cattle to market, we hire your young men as hands. Fair wages paid." The negotiation lasted hours, with breaks for ceremonial smoking and careful consideration of terms. Sarah proved an excellent intermediary, catching nuances in both languages. Her younger brother, William Tawa, barely 16, watched everything with keen interest. Finally, Chief Tawa spoke. "We will try this partnership. But know this: if you break faith, if you become like the others who promise and lie, the mountains themselves will turn against you." "Understood," Calder replied solemnly. Young William stepped forward. "I will guide you to the hidden springs, and I wish to learn your cattle ways." His grandfather frowned, but didn't forbid it. Sarah smiled. "William dreams of raising horses someday. He thinks learning your methods will help." As they prepared to leave, a commotion arose from the edge of camp. A young Shoshone woman stumbled into view, clearly injured. Her dress was torn, her face bruised, and she cradled her left arm protectively. "Rose!" Sarah ran to her. "What happened?" Through tears and rapid Shoshone, Rose told her story. Sarah's face darkened as she translated. "Pike's men, the ones who escaped arrest, they're camped at Beaver Creek, drinking, attacking anyone who comes near. Rose was gathering roots when they grabbed her." Eliza felt cold fury rise in her chest. Even locked up, Pike's poison lingered through his followers. She knelt beside Rose, gently examining her injuries. The arm wasn't broken, thankfully, but the bruises told an ugly story. "How many men?" Calder asked grimly. "3, Sarah translated. "Josiah Morse leads them. They have guns, whiskey. They say Pike will be free soon, that they'll burn out anyone who testified against him." Chief Tawa's face was stone. "This is why we do not trust white law. It cannot even cage its own mad dogs." "Then we handle it ourselves." Calder said, "Where exactly are they camped?" "No." Eliza stood. "Not violence, not revenge, justice." She looked at the chief. "Your granddaughter and Rose deserve justice, real justice. Will you trust us to get it?" The chief conferred with his advisors. Finally, 3 days. If your justice fails, we handle it our way. They rode hard back to the ranch, William accompanying them. Ephraim met them in the yard, his face grim. Trouble. Jefe, Morse, and 2 others been seen near town, making threats. Vale's looking but can't find them. We know where they are, Calder said, explaining quickly. May emerged from the house. That poor girl. Bring her here. I'll tend her proper. No time, Eliza said. We need witnesses, evidence, a legal response. Ephraim, ride to town. Get Vale, Carson, and Judge Benjamin if he's still there. Tell them we found the fugitives. And if they resist arrest, Ephraim asked. Then we do what's necessary, Calder replied. But we try it legal first. For Rose, for the partnership with the Shoshone, for our own souls. Within 2 hours, a posse assembled at the ranch. Vale led it officially, but everyone looked to Calder for guidance. Samuel Carson had insisted on coming, saying Rose would need legal representation immediately. I've sent word to Fort Laramie, Carson explained. Federal marshals have been looking for Morse. Seems he's wanted for similar crimes in Colorado. They approached Beaver Creek cautiously. William had provided detailed information about the camp layout, drawn maps in the dirt. The fugitives had chosen their spot well, a box canyon with only one easy entrance. Like rats in a trap, Vale muttered. Question is, will they fight or surrender? They got their answer soon enough. Morse emerged from behind rocks, rifle in hand, clearly drunk. Well, the mighty posse comes calling. Turn around, boys. Nothing to see here. Josiah Morse, Vale called out. You're under arrest for assault, fleeing justice, and federal warrants. Throw down your weapons. Morse laughed. You think that tin badge means anything? Pike's got judges in his pocket from here to Denver. He'll be free in a week, and then you'll all burn. Pike's finished, Calder said firmly. And so are you. Question is whether you come peaceful or feet first. Big talk from a woman stealing. The shot came from the rocks, one of Morse's companions, nervous or drunk, firing wild. The posse scattered for cover as bullets whined overhead. Eliza found herself behind a boulder with William, who despite his youth remained steady. Circle right, he whispered. Trail their leads above them. I can show you. Too dangerous, Eliza protested. My cousin is hurt. This is my fight too. She made a quick decision. While the posse exchanged fire with the fugitives, she and William slipped away, climbing the narrow deer trail he'd indicated. It was treacherous, requiring hands and feet, but within minutes they were above the camp. Below, they could see everything. Morse and his 2 companions, she recognized Gus Wellington and a man called Bart Stevens, had good cover but limited ammunition. They were also very drunk, their aim erratic. Can you shoot? William asked, eyeing her rifle. Learning, but I have a better idea. She pointed to the loose rocks above the fugitives' position. Think we could start a small slide, not to kill, just to scare them into the open. William grinned. My grandfather would like you. You think like Shoshone. Working together, they found the right spot, a precarious pile of rocks, held by one keystone. Eliza braced her rifle against it while William gathered throwing stones. Ready, she called down to Vale. You might want them to surrender right about now. Morse looked up, saw them, and raised his rifle. But Eliza was already levering the keystone loose. The rumble started small, then grew as rocks cascaded down. Not a killing slide, but enough to send the fugitives scrambling into the open. The posse was ready. Vale and 3 men rushed forward while the fugitives were off balance. Morse tried to fight, but Ephraim's lasso settled the matter, yanking the rifle from his hands. In minutes, it was over. 3 men in irons, no one dead, justice served. That was cleverly done, Carson complimented as Eliza and William climbed down. Though perhaps we don't mention the unauthorized climbing to Judge Benjamin. The girl needs a doctor,
Eliza reminded them, and these men need to answer for what they did. The ride back was subdued. Morse and his companions were secured in the town jail's better cells, with federal marshals already telegraphed to collect them. Rose was taken to Doc Stevenson, who confirmed no lasting physical damage, though the emotional wounds would take longer. That evening, Chief Tawa himself came to the ranch. "You kept your word," he said simply. "The men who hurt my granddaughter's cousin will face justice. This is, unexpected." "Justice shouldn't depend on skin color," Eliza replied. "Wrong is wrong." The chief studied her. "You would have made a good Shoshone." "Very well. William will show you the water sources, and perhaps this partnership you speak of is possible." Over the following days, William proved invaluable. He led them to hidden springs fed by mountain snowmelt, showed them box canyons where cattle could shelter, identified plants that indicated water even in drought. "My people have known these things for generations," he explained as they marked a new spring on Calder's map. "The land speaks if you listen. Most folks are too busy shouting to hear," Calder observed. The work was hard, creating new water access points, digging channels, setting up rotation systems so the land could recover. But it was good work, bringing together ranch hands and Shoshone youth in common purpose. Eliza threw herself into it, learning to read the land's subtle signs. She worked alongside Sarah Tawa, who proved adept at organizing the combined efforts. "You're different," Sarah said one day as they supervised a channel dig. "Most white women wouldn't work in the dirt, especially not beside Indians. Most white women haven't learned what I've learned," Eliza replied, thinking of her journey from Ohio to here. "That dignity comes from inside, not from staying clean or feeling superior to others." The drought continued, but the new water sources held. Cattle that would have died thrived. The partnership proved its worth daily, with Shoshone hunters helping locate strays and ranch hands sharing food supplies. Not everyone approved. Some townsfolk muttered about Boone going native and that woman's influence. But when other ranches started losing cattle to thirst, attitudes began shifting. One evening, a delegation of ranchers appeared at Boone's door. Ben McGrath led them, hat literally in hand. "We're hurting," he admitted without preamble. "Stock's dying, wells running dry. Heard you made some kind of deal with the Indians." "A partnership," Calder corrected, "based on mutual respect and benefit. Whatever you call it, we need water. What would it take to get in on this partnership?" Eliza and Calder exchanged glances. This was unexpected, but potentially game-changing. "That's not just our decision," Eliza said. "Chief Tawa and his council would need to agree, and there would be conditions, such as recognition of traditional hunting grounds, fair wages for Shoshone workers, no damming of streams, water shared according to need, not greed." McGrath's face worked through several expressions. "That's asking a lot." "Is it?" Calder asked mildly. "Seems like asking for basic decency and survival. Your choice: work together and live, or stand alone and watch your herds die." The negotiations took days, with Carson drawing up legal frameworks that protected all parties. Not all ranchers joined, some preferring their pride to their cattle, but enough did to create a water-sharing compact that became a model for drought cooperation. Through it all, Eliza found herself at the center, translating between cultures, mediating disputes, proving that strength could build rather than destroy. Her relationship with Calder deepened, built on shared work and values rather than mere attraction. One evening, as they watched sunset paint the mountains purple, William approached with news. "Grandfather wishes you to attend the summer gathering. Both of you. It's unusual for whites to be invited." "We're honored," Eliza said immediately. The gathering was 3 days of ceremony, trade, and celebration. Eliza and Calder were welcomed not as curiosities but as proven friends. They participated in dances, shared meals, witnessed traditions few whites had seen. On the last night, Chief Tawa called them forward. You have shown that some whites can keep their word, can see beyond themselves. This is rare. He produced 2 items, a beaded belt for Calder and an intricately woven shawl for Eliza. Wear these. They mark you as friends of the Shoshone. May they remind you that all peoples are one under the sky. The ride home was quiet, both processing what they'd experienced. As they created a rise, the ranch spread below them in moonlight. Calder suddenly reined in. Eliza, I need to say something. She turned in her saddle, heart suddenly racing. These weeks, working beside you, seeing your courage and wisdom. I know I said to take time, to be sure, but I'm sure as drought and rain, sure as sunrise, I love you. Not as a rescue or a responsibility, but as the woman who bridges worlds, who fights for justice, who makes me want to be better than I am. Calder, you don't have to answer now. Pike's trial is coming, and you need to focus on that. But after, when you're truly free, I want to build a life with you. Real partnership, like we built here with water and trust. Eliza nudged her horse closer, reached out to touch his face. I don't need to wait for the trial. My answer won't change. Yes, Calder. Yes to partnership, to building together, to love that respects and strengthens. He caught her hand, pressed it to his lips. You sure this life isn't easy drought and conflict and hard work? But it's real. And it's chosen. She smiled through tears. That makes all the difference. They sat there on horseback, hands joined across the gap between their mounts, while the moon rose full and bright. Below, the ranch slept peacefully, its water secure through cooperation. The trial loomed ahead, but beyond it lay a future they would build together. Race you home, Eliza suggested, mischief in her eyes. You're on. They thundered down the slope, laughing like children, free as the land itself. Whatever tomorrow brought testimony and judgment, drought or plenty, they would face it together. Not as rescuer and rescued, but as equals who'd chosen each other and chosen to build something greater than either could alone. The Shoshone shawl streamed behind Eliza as she rode, a banner of friendship and hope. The water compacts had proven that different peoples could work together when survival depended on it. Now she and Calder would prove that love could grow even in hard soil, watered by respect and trust rather than possession. The ranch lights welcomed them home. May stood on the porch, shaking her head at their wildness, but smiling. Ephraim's guitar drifted from the bunkhouse. William's horse was in the corral he'd decided to stay and learn, with his grandfather's blessing. This was family, chosen, built, defended, and at its heart, the simple revolutionary idea that people were not property, that partnership meant equality, that love was not taking but giving. Tomorrow they would return to the work of survival, tending cattle, maintaining water systems, preparing for trial. But tonight, they were simply home, together, free. The drought would eventually break. The trial would end. Life would bring new challenges. But here on the Boone Ranch, they'd proven that cooperation could overcome conflict, that justice could prevail over power, that love could grow even in the harshest ground. The torn wedding dress was long gone, burned with the trash. In its place grew something infinitely stronger, a bond forged in mutual respect, tested by adversity, and chosen freely by both hearts involved. As Eliza unsaddled her horse, she fingered the Shoshone shawl, thinking of all the connections it represented: water rights and human rights, survival and dignity, the radical notion that different peoples could thrive together. No regrets, Calder asked softly, coming up beside her. Only that it took so long to find this, she replied. To find you. To find myself. Worth the wait, though. She turned into his arms, the first time she'd done so freely, without fear or reservation. Worth everything. In the distance, coyotes sang to the moon. The night wind carried the scent of sage and possibility.
and two people who'd thought themselves beyond happiness discovered that the best was yet to come. The plan formed over bitter coffee in the pre-dawn darkness. Calder would lead Ephraim and William to create a diversion at Pike's illegal dam, while Eliza and May slipped into town to search the smithy for evidence. The trial was just days away, and Samuel Carson needed more proof of Pike's human trafficking scheme. "I don't like splitting up," Calder said, checking his rifle for the third time. "Pike's locked up, most of his men too." Eliza reminded him, "This is our best chance to find those contracts." "Still dangerous. If someone's watching the smithy." "Then May and I will handle it." Eliza checked her own weapon, the pistol Calder had taught her to use. "We're not helpless women, remember?" May snorted. "Speak for yourself. I'm a tough old bird who's delivered half this county. They wouldn't dare cross me." As the first pale light touched the eastern mountains, they set out. The drought had worsened, turning the landscape lunar and hostile. Dust devils danced across bare earth where grass should wave. At the fork in the trail, Calder caught Eliza's stirrup. "Be careful, please." "You too. That dam won't give up easy." They parted, each group focused on their mission. Eliza and May rode hard for town, timing their arrival for the quiet hour when shopkeepers prepared to open, but streets remained empty. The smithy sat dark and abandoned, yellow tape across the door proclaiming it sealed by order of the sheriff. But Vale had quietly provided a side entrance key, his part in their plan. "Quick now," May whispered as they slipped inside. The workshop smelled of cold ash and iron, abandoned tools gathering dust. Eliza went straight for Pike's office area while May kept watch. The desk was locked, but Ephraim had taught her some tricks. "Bless that man and his misspent youth," she muttered, working the lock with a hairpin. The drawer popped open, revealing exactly what they'd hoped and worse. Not just contracts for mail-order brides, but ledgers detailing payments, destinations, handlers. Pike hadn't just been acquiring wives for himself, but running a network, shipping desperate women across the frontier. "Dear God," May breathed, reading over her shoulder. "There must be 50 names here." Including Mary Todd and Susan Hale. Eliza pointed to entries marked "disposed of defective merchandise." Her hands shook with rage. "He kept records of murdering them." "Take it all. Carson will." The front door burst open. Josiah Morse stood silhouetted against morning light apparently. He'd made bail or escaped. His face was haggard, clothes filthy, but the gun in his hand was steady. "Thought I might find rats in the grain," he snarled. "Pike said someone would come sniffing." "Josiah," May said calmly, "put that down before you do something even stupider than usual." "Shut up, old woman. You," he gestured at Eliza with the gun. "You ruined everything. Pike was gonna make me rich. Had buyers lined up from California to Texas." "Buyers?" Eliza repeated, disgusted. "For women. Human beings. Commerce." Morse spat. "Supply and demand. These prairie towns are full of lonely men with money. We provided a service." "You provided slavery." Eliza shifted slightly, putting herself between Morse and the evidence. "And murder when they resisted." "Details. Now step aside. I'm taking those books and disappearing. Mexico, maybe, where business is appreciated." "I can't let you do that." Eliza's hand inched toward her pistol. "You'll do what I say, or..." The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space, but it wasn't Morse who'd fired. May stood with an ancient pepperbox pistol, smoke curling from its barrel. Morse's gun went flying as he clutched his wounded hand. "That's for every woman in those ledgers," May said grimly. "And this is for trying to threaten my friend." She swung the pistol like a club, catching Morse across the temple. He dropped like a sack of grain. "May, where did you..." "James Boone gave me this when we first came west. Said a woman alone needed protection. First time I've used it in anger." She looked at the unconscious Morse. "Felt good." They quickly bound Morse with rope from the workshop. Eliza gathered all the documents while May went for help. Within minutes, Deputy Vale arrived with reinforcements. Morse escaped during transfer, Vale explained, looking embarrassed. Bribed a guard. We think, good thing you were here.
Good thing May's a crack shot,
Eliza corrected. Meanwhile, at Pike's illegal dam, Calder's team faced their own challenges. The structure was more elaborate than expected, not just a simple barrier, but an engineered system of gates and channels designed to divert the entire stream to Pike's property. No wonder the Shoshone's traditional fishing grounds dried up, William observed. This killed the whole watershed. Then we fix it. Calder decided. Ephraim, think we can blow the main support. Say, but it'll take most of our black powder, and the noise will bring anyone loyal to Pike running. Calder finished. Do it anyway. This ends today. They worked quickly, placing charges while William kept watch. The young Shoshone had proven invaluable, his skills bridging both worlds. As Ephraim set the fuses, riders appeared on the ridge, 4 men, armed. Pike's leftover trash. William identified. The Stevens brothers and 2 others. Light the fuses, Calder ordered. We'll hold them off. The firefight was brief but intense. The Stevens brothers, realizing they were outnumbered and outpositioned, tried to rush the dam to stop the demolition. Calder and William's covering fire drove them back. At 10 seconds, Ephraim shouted, diving for cover. The explosion shook the earth. The dam, built over years of greed, collapsed in moments. Water, freed from its prison, roared back into its natural channel, a brown torrent at first, carrying years of silt, then running clearer as it remembered its path. The Stevens brothers and their companions, seeing their patron's work destroyed, fled rather than face arrest for a lost cause. Look, William pointed downstream. Already, the restored flow was reaching dried pools where his people had once fished. The salmon will return now. Life will return. They met back at the ranch as noon sun hammered the land. Eliza and May's evidence spread across the kitchen table, telling a story of systematic evil that shocked even hardened frontier folk. This changes everything, Samuel Carson said, reviewing the documents. This isn't just about your forced marriage anymore. This is about a criminal enterprise spanning multiple states. The federal marshals will want this. Vale added, he'd been transformed by recent events, finding the lawman he'd always meant to be. Pike won't see sunlight for decades. But their victory celebration was interrupted by Noah riding in hard, trouble-coming wagon and riders from town. They assembled on the porch, armed but hoping for peace. The wagon bore an unexpected cargo, 3 women, travel-worn and frightened, accompanied by Reverend Grady and several townspeople. These women arrived on today's stage, Grady explained, visibly shaken. They say they're mail-order brides. For Pike. The women young, desperate, clearly fleeing their own tragedies, huddled together. One, braver than the rest, spoke up. We were told there was work, husbands, a new life. We paid everything we had. You were lied to, Eliza said gently, stepping forward. Pike is in jail for crimes including trafficking women like you. The revelation broke them. Tears, recriminations, the horrible realization of how close they'd come to Eliza's fate, or worse. May immediately took charge, ushering them inside for food and comfort. What will happen to us? The brave one who gave her name as Clara Holmes asked. We have nothing, nowhere. You'll stay here while we sort things out, Calder said firmly. The ranch has work if you want it, fair wages, or we'll help you get wherever you were really going. Why would you help strangers? Because someone helped me when I was a desperate stranger, Eliza answered, and because it's right. Grady cleared his throat. Miss Hart, He struggled, then found his words. I owe you an apology, all of you.
I knew Pike was rough, but I told myself it wasn't my business. I took his money for the church and closed my eyes. That makes me complicit in every horrible thing in those ledgers. Yes, Eliza agreed simply. It does. I'm resigning my position. The church deserves better. You deserve better. He turned to go, then looked back. For what it's worth, you've shown more Christianity in your actions than I have in all my sermons. The afternoon was spent in controlled chaos, settling the new women, sending telegrams to federal authorities, preparing for the expanded trial. Through it all, Eliza noticed Calder watching her with an unreadable expression. What? She finally asked. Just thinking how far we've come. That first night, you were running from one man. Now you're taking down an entire network and sheltering other victims. We're taking it down, she corrected. I couldn't do any of this alone. As evening approached, a storm built over the mountains, not the dry lightning they'd feared, but real rain clouds, heavy with promise. The drought might be breaking, William observed, reading the signs his grandfather had taught him. As if his words were prophecy, the first drops fell just after sunset, not a brief shower but steady, soaking rain that the land drank greedily. Everyone rushed outside. Faces turned skyward, laughing and crying at once. In the midst of celebration, Calder pulled Eliza aside. There's something else in Pike's papers, a name I recognized, Theodore Whitman from Ohio. He was one of Pike's buyers. Eliza's blood ran cold. The man who'd attacked her back home, who'd driven her to flee, he was part of this network. He was going to buy a wife. Looks like he already did, too. According to this, both died within a year of reaching Ohio. The full horror of it hit her. She'd escaped one predator only to run toward another. If Pike had been a different sort of evil, if she hadn't fled that first night. Hey, Calder said softly, pulling her against him as rain soaked them both. You survived. You're here. You're safe. And fighting to make sure others are too, she added fiercely. Thunder rumbled overhead as the storm intensified. They should go inside, but something held them there in the cleansing rain. Tomorrow would bring the trial. Testimony. The full exposure of Pike's network. There would be danger still cornered, rats fight hardest. But tonight, with the rain washing the dust away and justice within reach, they stood together. Not victim and rescuer, but partners who'd chosen to fight darkness with light. I love you, Eliza said suddenly, rain streaming down her face. I should have said it before, but I love you. Calder Boone. Not for saving me, but for seeing me. For believing I could save myself. And I love you for showing me that protecting someone doesn't mean owning them. That real strength builds others up instead of tearing them down. He kissed her then, there in the storm, while thunder blessed their union and rain washed the world clean. When they finally went inside, soaked through but glowing, they found organized chaos. May had the 3 new women settled with hot food and dry clothes. Clara was already asking about work opportunities, showing spine despite her circumstances. William and Ephraim compared notes on the dam destruction, planning how to help other ranchers remove illegal water barriers. Noah pestered everyone for stories while doing his chores. Family, May said quietly, appearing at Eliza's elbow. Looks different than most expect, but family all the same. That night, as rain drummed on the roof and filled their cisterns, Eliza lay wakeful despite exhaustion. Tomorrow she would face Pike in court, testify to things that shamed her, even though the shame wasn't hers to bear. She would speak for Mary Todd and Susan Hale and names in a ledger who might never be found. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in. It was Clara Holmes, looking younger than her years in borrowed night clothes. I couldn't sleep. Wanted to thank you again, and to ask, how do you do it? Stand up there, fight them, not be afraid. I am afraid, Eliza admitted. Every day. But I learned something important. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear. And it gets easier with practice and good people beside you.
Will it really get better? Or are we just trading one trap for another? That depends on us, on choosing to be more than victims, on fighting for ourselves and each other. Eliza smiled. Stay for the trial if you want. See how we handle wolves in sheep's clothing here. After Clara left, Eliza rose and went to her window. The rain had gentled but continued steady. By morning, the streams would run again. The land would remember green. It was a promise, a reminder that even the worst drought eventually breaks. Tomorrow would test them all. But tonight, under the blessing of rain, they were ready. The torn wedding dress was long burned, but from its ashes had risen something stronger, a woman who knew her worth, a love built on equality, a community united against evil. Pike thought he owned the law, owned women, owned water itself. Tomorrow they would teach him otherwise. Tomorrow they would speak truth to power and trust justice to prevail. But tonight, Eliza Hart, soon-to-be Boone, listened to rain sing against windows and knew herself finally, fully free. Not because a man had saved her, but because she had saved herself and then chosen to stay and fight for others. The morning would come soon enough with all its challenges. For now, she let the rain's lullaby carry her toward dreams of justice served and love freely given, the two greatest rebellions against men like Pike who would own the world. Tomorrow, the real storm would break. Tonight, clean rain washed the world. And that was enough. The morning of the trial dawned clear after the night's cleansing rain. Judge Benjamin Whitcomb had commandeered the church for the proceedings, the largest building in Dusty Ford. By 8 o'clock, it overflowed with spectators drawn by the promise of justice or spectacle. Eliza sat in the front row beside Samuel Carson, her hands folded to hide their trembling. She wore her best dress, maize, really altered to fit, and the Shoshone shawl draped over her shoulders. Across the aisle, Pike sat in irons, his face twisted with rage. His remaining supporters clustered behind him, a dwindling band growing smaller as evidence mounted. All rise. Deputy Vale commanded as Judge Whitcomb entered. The judge was a small man with the presence of a mountain. He surveyed the packed church with sharp eyes before speaking. This court is convened to hear charges against Harlan Pike, including trafficking in persons, fraud, conspiracy, arson, and murder. Additional federal charges are pending. Mr. Carson, you may begin. Carson rose, every inch the professional despite his travel-worn appearance. Your Honor, we will show that Mr. Pike operated a criminal enterprise spanning years, trafficking desperate women under the guise of mail-order marriage, with violence against those who resisted. Lies, Pike erupted. That woman's a witch who's turned everyone against me. Mr. Pike, you will remain silent unless addressed. Judge Whitcomb warned. Another outburst and you'll be gagged. Proceed, Mr. Carson. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. First, the ledgers Eliza and May had recovered, each entry a life destroyed or enslaved. Then testimony from Clara Holmes and the other women who'd arrived expecting marriage but finding bondage. He wrote to me of partnership, Clara testified, voice steady despite her fear. A life building something together. But these books show I was sold before I ever left Missouri, sold like cattle to a man in California. One by one, witnesses spoke. Elizabeth Winfield testified about bruises seen on Mary Todd before her death. Doc Stevenson confirmed injuries consistent with violence, not accidents. Even Reverend Grady, broken by conscience, admitted Pike had paid him to perform ceremonies knowing the women were coerced. Through it all, Pike's lawyer, a greasy man named Cornelius Tweed from the territorial capital, objected and blustered, but the evidence was overwhelming. I call Eliza Hart to testify, Carson announced. The walk to the witness chair felt endless. Eliza was aware of every eye, every whisper. Pike's stare burned with hatred, but Calder's steady gaze from the gallery gave her strength. Miss Hart, please tell the court about your arrival in Dusty Ford.
Eliza began with the advertisement that promised a new life, the desperate hope that drove her west. She spoke of the ceremony, Pike's drunken rage, the torn dress. Her voice faltered only once, describing the moment she realized she'd traded one prison for another. "But you escaped," Carson prompted gently. "Yes, mister. Boone offered shelter without conditions. He and his household showed me that not all men view women as property." "Objection," Tweed bounced up. "The witness is editorializing." "Overruled. Continue, Miss Hart." She detailed the harassment, the threats, the burned shed, then the crucial discovery in Pike's office. "These ledgers show everything. Women bought and sold, lives marked disposed of like broken tools. Mary Todd and Susan Hale murdered for resisting." "That's speculation," Tweed began. "Is it?" Eliza pulled out a telegram. "This arrived yesterday from Theodore Whitman in Ohio, one of Pike's buyers. He confirms purchasing 2 brides through Pike. Both died mysteriously within a year. He's turned state's evidence to avoid prosecution." The courtroom erupted. Pike lunged toward the witness stand, only to be wrestled down by Vale and 2 deputies. "You lying witch Whitman's a coward, and you're—" "Gag him," Judge Whitcomb ordered coldly. "Miss Hart, do you have anything else to add?" Eliza looked directly at Pike, then at the packed courtroom. "Only this. I was lucky. I found help, found justice. But how many didn't? How many names in those books represent women who died afraid and alone because men like Pike think they can own human beings?" She lifted her chin. "That ends today." The defense's case was pitiful. Tweed argued contract law, implied the women knew what they were agreeing to, suggested cultural differences excused violence. Each argument fell flat against the mountain of evidence and testimony. The final blow came from an unexpected source. Josiah Morse, nursing his wounded hand and facing federal charges, had flipped entirely. His testimony detailed the entire network buyers. Rotes, bribes to officials, murders disguised as accidents. Pike bragged about it. Morse said sullenly, said women were like horses, break them right and they'd work till they died. And if they didn't break, he shrugged. "Plenty more where they came from." Judge Whitcomb had heard enough. "This court finds Harlan Pike guilty on all charges. Sentencing will await federal prosecution, but I can guarantee you will never again see freedom. Mr. Pike, you are a stain on humanity." Pike, still gagged, could only rage with his eyes as he was dragged away. But his supporters weren't finished. As the crowd began to disperse, someone shouted fire. Smoke poured from the back of the church. In the panic, Eliza was separated from Calder and Carson. Bodies pressed on all sides as people fought for the doors. Then strong hands grabbed her, pulling her not towards safety but deeper into the chaos. Bart Stevens, one of Pike's last loyal men, had her arm in a brutal grip. "Pike says hello," he snarled, dragging her toward a side door. But Eliza was no longer the frightened woman who'd fled in a torn dress. She drove her elbow into Stevens's ribs, stomped his instep, twisted free. When he reached for her again, she grabbed a hymnal and swung it with all her strength. Stevens went down hard. "Eliza," Calder's voice cut through the smoke. "Here I'm here." He appeared like an avenging angel, May and Ephraim flanking him. Together they fought through the crowd to fresh air. The fire, it turned out, was more smoke than flame. A final desperate distraction that failed like all Pike's schemes. Outside, order slowly restored itself. Judge Whitcomb, unruffled despite ash on his robes, made a pronouncement from the church steps. Let it be known that justice prevailed today despite attempts at intimidation. Mr. Pike will be transported to federal custody immediately. This court also rules that all contracts for mail-order brides through Pike are null and void. These women are free. A cheer went up from the crowd. The 3 newest arrivals wept with relief. Clara grabbed Eliza in a fierce hug. "You did it! You really did it!" "We all did it," Eliza corrected. "Every person who stood up and spoke truth.
As the crowd dispersed and the smoke cleared, Vale approached with Stevens in custody. Last of Pike's gang, though I doubt he'll be the last to think women are for buying and selling. No, Eliza agreed. But today we showed them there are consequences. That's a start. The ride back to the ranch was subdued despite victory. Justice had been served, but the cost was evident in every name in Pike's ledgers. As they approached home, William rode out to meet them. Chief Tawa sends congratulations, he reported, and an invitation. He wishes to honor the courage shown today with a ceremony. That evening, as the sun set behind mountains still dark with rain clouds, both communities gathered at the restored creek. The water ran clear and strong, fish already returning to pools that had been dry for years. Chief Joseph Tawa spoke through his granddaughter Sarah. Today, wrongs were addressed. Not all wrongs, those are beyond counting, but some, the water flows free. Women walk free. This is good. He produced a pipe, passing it first to Calder, then to Eliza. You are written in our memory as friends. Your children's children will be welcome at our fires. Speaking of children, May said slyly as they returned to the ranch, when might we expect an announcement? A proper one. I mean. Eliza blushed while Calder coughed. May, we've been a bit busy with trials and such. Trials are done. Pike's gone. Seems like time for building instead of fighting. She wasn't wrong. That night, as Eliza helped the 3 rescued women settle in, they decided to stay and work the ranch. At least temporarily, she felt a shift in the air. The crisis had passed. Now came the harder work of normal life. She found Calder on the porch, watching stars appear in the rain-washed sky. Without speaking, she settled beside him, fitting naturally against his side. May's right, he said eventually. I've been so focused on protecting you, I forgot to ask what you want now that you don't need protection. I want this, Eliza said simply. This life, this work, this family we've built. And I want you, not as protector, but as partner, equal in all things. Even in proposing, there was gentle teasing in his voice. Especially that. She turned to face him fully. Calder Boone, you showed me that strength can be gentle, that love doesn't possess. You gave me space to find myself and courage to fight for others. Will you marry me? Really marry me? As equals choosing each other freely. His answer was in his kiss, tender and sure. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying and laughing at once. Yes, he said unnecessarily. Though I had a whole speech planned. Save it for the vows. I want to hear it when everyone can witness. From inside came the sound of celebration, apparently. May had been watching through the window and spread the news. Soon the porch filled with well-wishers. Clara and the other women, still finding their feet but already part of the ranch's extended family. William, grinning wide. Ephraim with his guitar, playing something joyful. Noah dancing badly but with enthusiasm. When? May demanded. And don't say you need time. You've had time. Eliza and Calder exchanged glances. 2 weeks, she suggested. Here at the ranch, something simple but real. Nothing about you two is simple, Ephraim observed. But real that you've got in spades. As the impromptu celebration continued, Eliza stepped away for a moment of quiet. So much had changed since that midnight flight in a torn dress. She'd found her strength, her voice, her purpose, and love not the desperate grasping of those who confuse need with want, but mature love between equals. The torn dress was ash. Pike was caged. The frightened girl from Ohio had become a woman who fought for justice. But the journey wasn't ending, it was transforming into something sustainable, rooted, real. No regrets, Calder asked, finding her in the quiet. Only gratitude, she replied. For the courage to run that night, for you being there, for all of it, even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts, he agreed. They made us who we are. Tomorrow would bring new challenges,
the ranch to run, the water compact to maintain, 3 traumatized women to help heal. There would be other Pikes in the world, other fights for justice. But tonight, under stars reflected in running water, surrounded by chosen family, Eliza Hart, soon-to-be Boone, knew herself wholly free and wholly home. The mail-order bride had become her own woman, and in choosing herself, had found everything she'd never dared dream. The trial was over. The real life, the good life, the chosen life was just beginning. The summer rain continued through the night before the wedding, a gentle percussion on the ranch house roof. Eliza woke early, not from nerves, but from a deep sense of rightness. Through her window, she could see the world washed clean, grass finally showing green after months of brown. May bustled in with coffee and a knowing smile. No second thoughts. Only wonder that it's really happening. Eliza accepted the cup gratefully. A real wedding. Chosen, not bartered. About time, too. That man's been pining since you fixed his heart without meaning to. May laid out the wedding dress, not white, which belonged to a past Eliza had shed, but soft blue like sage flowers. Clara finished the embroidery last night. Girls got talented fingers. The dress was simple but beautiful, with delicate stitching along the hem, wildflowers and running water, symbols of survival and new life. Clara, Hannah, and Ruth, the 3 women who'd stayed after Pike's network collapsed, had worked on it together, their gift to the woman who'd saved them. It's perfect, Eliza breathed. You earned perfect, May said firmly. Now, let's make you a bride, a real one this time. Across the ranch, Calder stood with Ephraim and William, watching the sun chase away the last clouds. He wore his best suit, the one Grace had insisted he buy years ago, now pulled from storage and aired out. Nervous, Jefe? Ephraim asked, adjusting Calder's collar. No. Should I be? Most grooms are, but then most grooms haven't been through fire with their brides before the wedding. Ephraim grinned. You 2 did everything backward: the trials, the partnership, the fighting side by side. Now comes the easy part. Nothing about Eliza is easy, Calder said with affection. That's what makes her worth everything. William, dressed in a mix of traditional Shoshone beadwork and frontier formal, nodded approvingly. Grandfather says unions forged in hardship last like mountains. You've both been tested. The spirits approve. By noon, the ranch overflowed with guests. The ceremony would be in the meadow by the restored creek, where wildflowers bloomed in profusion thanks to the rain. Chief Tawa had come with a delegation, sitting beside the ranchers and townspeople in a mixing that would have been impossible months before. Samuel Carson had agreed to officiate, since I've seen this relationship from legal contract to true love. He'd said even Deputy Vale was there, badge polished, standing straight with newfound pride in his position. Noah, scrubbed and nervous in his role as ring-bearer, kept checking his pocket. They're still there, he whispered to Hannah, who was managing flowers. I've checked 6 times. Check again, she whispered back, understanding the weight of responsibility. Then came the moment. Ephraim's guitar sang a melody that was part Mexican love song, part frontier ballad. Guests rose as Eliza appeared. She walked alone, no one to give her away because she was not property to transfer. But she was not lonely. Every step was accompanied by the family she'd built, May beaming with maternal pride. Clara and the women who'd found freedom alongside her. The Shoshone delegation who'd accepted her as friend. Calder waited at the creek's edge, and the look on his face made every hardship worthwhile. Wonder, respect, love, and something more, recognition of an equal, a partner, a choice freely made. Friends. Carson began when Eliza reached Calder's side. We gather to witness something rare, a love built on mutual respect, tested by fire, and chosen freely by both parties. No contracts, no purchase, no coercion. Just 2 people deciding to build a life together. The ceremony was simple but profound. When Carson asked who supported this union, the entire gathering responded a thunderous "we do" that startled birds from the trees. Calder spoke his vows first, the speech he'd saved. "Eliza, you arrived in darkness and brought light, not the soft light of candles, but the fierce light of truth, burning away shadows and lies. You taught me that protecting someone doesn't mean constraining them, that love multiplies when shared freely. I choose you not to own but to stand beside, not to save but to support, today and always, in drought and plenty, in trial and peace." Eliza's voice was strong as she responded, "Calder, you showed me that strength can be gentle, that men can be partners, not masters. When I ran in a torn dress, you offered shelter without price. When I found my voice, you helped amplify it. When I chose to fight, you stood with me. I choose you not from need but from want, not for safety but for love. Today and always, building together what neither could build alone." Noah produced the rings without dropping them, a minor miracle that made him glow with pride. The rings were simple gold bands, but inside each was engraved, "Chosen freely." "By the authority vested in me by the territory of Wyoming," Carson proclaimed. "And more importantly, by the clear choice of two free hearts, I pronounce you husband and wife, equal partners in all things." The kiss was sweet and sure, witnessed by two communities brought together by water rights and human rights. As they turned to face their guests, the sun broke fully through, setting the wet grass sparkling like scattered diamonds. The celebration that followed was a blend of cultures: Shoshone drums mixed with Ephraim's guitar. May's traditional cake sat beside fry bread and ranch beef. Children, both settler and native, played together by the creek that flowed for all. "No regrets about a simple wedding?" Calder asked as they watched their guests mingle. "This isn't simple," Eliza corrected. "This is complex and beautiful and real. Simple would have been accepting fate. This," she gestured at the unprecedented gathering, "this took work." Chief Tawa approached with Sarah translating. "The union of equals creates strength," he said formally. Then, with a slight smile, "Also, my grandson wishes to know if you'll still teach him cattle management now that you're married." "Of course," Eliza laughed. "Partnership doesn't end with wedding vows. It expands." As afternoon wore toward evening, Clara pulled Eliza aside. "I need to tell you something. We've decided, Hannah. Ruth and I, we're staying, not just for work, but to build something, like you did." "The ranch is growing," Eliza acknowledged. "Not just the ranch. We've been talking with other women, ones who've written after hearing about Pike's trial. They need somewhere to start over, somewhere safe." Clara's eyes were fierce with purpose. "We want to create a way station for women running from bad situations, teach them skills, give them choices." Eliza felt tears threaten. "Yes, absolutely yes, we'll make it happen." The party continued past sunset, lanterns lit against the dark, stars appearing one by one. At one point, Eliza found herself by the creek with a Shoshone shawl around her shoulders, her something old to go with the new dress. New life, new name. The torn wedding dress was long gone, but Eliza had kept one small piece, a scrap of lace from her mother's contribution. Now she took it from her pocket and let it float away on the current. "Goodbye," she whispered to all it represented: fear, desperation, the girl who'd believed she had no choices. "What are you thinking?" Calder asked, finding her in the quiet moment. "How far we've come, how far we still have to go." She leaned into his warmth. "Clara wants to create a refuge for women like us, like I was." "Of course she does. You inspire people to fight for better." He was quiet a moment. "You know this makes us a target again. There are still men who think like Pike. Then we'll face them like we faced him, together, with community, with the law when it works and courage when it doesn't." They stood together watching moonlight dance on water that flowed freely, no longer claimed by one man's greed. Behind them, Their wedding guests created a tapestry of laughter and connection that would have seemed impossible just months ago.
"Ready to go home, Mrs. Boone?" Calder asked eventually.
"I've been home since that first night," Eliza replied. "But yes, I'm ready for our next chapter."
They walked back to the celebration hand in hand, equals in truth as well as law. The ranch spread before them not just buildings and land, but a living community that proved different was possible. May intercepted them with knowing smiles.
"The house is yours tonight. We're all camping by the creek, giving you privacy."
"May," Eliza blushed.
"What, you think I don't know what wedding nights are for? Just remember, these walls aren't that thick come morning."
She cackled at their expressions. "Now go, be married, be happy. You've earned it 10 times over." As the celebration continued without them, Eliza and Calder slipped away to the house. At the threshold, he paused. "Tradition says I should carry you. Tradition says a lot of things. We make our own."
But she smiled. "Though just this once."
He lifted her easily, both of them laughing as he navigated the doorway. Inside, the house was warm with lamplight and possibility. Their house now, their life, their choices.
"I love you," Eliza said simply. "Partner."
"I love you," Calder replied, equal. Outside, music continued under stars. The creek sang its freedom. Communities that had been divided were learning to unite. And two people who'd thought themselves too damaged for happiness discovered that broken things, mended with gold, could be stronger than before. The mail-order bride had become her own woman. The quiet rancher had found his voice. Together, they'd changed a corner of the world and would keep changing it, one choice at a time. No ownership, no force, just love, freely given and freely received. In the restored meadow, wildflowers bloomed where dust had ruled. Water flowed where greed had dammed it. And in a ranch house in Wyoming territory, two equals began their true partnership with joy, with hope, with the radical promise that people could choose better if given the chance. The torn dress was gone. In its place, a life, a real life, a chosen life.
And it was more than enough. It was everything.
Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed following Eliza and Calder's journey from that fateful midnight meeting to their joyful union. If you're listening to this tale right now, I'd love to know where in the world you are. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and discuss what this story meant to you. If you enjoyed this Western romance, please subscribe to Wild West Stories 1850 and hit that like button. And don't forget to press the hype button to help more people discover this story of courage, justice, and love in the American frontier. Until our next adventure in the Old West, partners.